Hi, this is Miss Davis. Today we're going to take a look over the public speaking rubric for our speech class. This rubric will be used on every speech you deliver over the course of the semester, so it's a good thing to be pretty familiar with it. To start, at the top is kind of the key to understanding how the points go. 5 means you're rocking it. You're definitely doing it well in that area. 1 makes me wonder if you've been in my class all semester. 3 is kind of 50-50, and then 2 and 4 take up the middle ground between those. The front side of the rubric is entirely the presentation. This is the what we see from you in class portion of the program. So this actually deals with your voice and how you're using it, and the back deals with the writing of your speech. So these are all based, each of these areas is based on the 6+1 writing traits. So hopefully you're familiar with at least the heading terminology going into this. On the presentation side, let's just focus on this block here right now. We'll walk, I promise, through the violation deductions and how all the math works in a little bit. But the presentation section, we expect you to have clear gestures, hand movements. Inflections are how you use the highs and lows of your voice, so we want those to be varied so that you do not sound like a robot. Articulation is how you make the sounds that make up words. In class, we'll be talking about how Indiana in particular has some dialectic issues that cause us problems with articulation, so our goal is to get you to open your mouth and make those sounds appropriately. Resonance deals with actually that opening your mouth portion of the program and how you're echoing the sound throughout the room. You'll see quickly that some of these are interrelated. Your resonance affects your articulation, which might actually affect your inflection. So there may be some cascading or snowball effects from some of these grades as well. Appropriate rate deals with how fast or slow you speak. Our tendency is to speed up when we get nervous, so it's important to have that in mind. A varied rate, it's good to have places where you go faster, and then have some places where you slow it back down for emphasis, so vary up your rate. Solid projection deals with making sure that you are creating a volume from your voice, creating a volume for your voice that allows us to hear you throughout the classroom. That's really important. Appropriate posture, stand up straight, don't lean on the podium. Solid body language means that you are exuding confidence. We'll talk about that in class with your body. Controlled body. Some of us tend to wiggle our foot or tap our hands when we get nervous. So make sure that you're keeping those body movements in control. Sometimes I get students with longer hair who tend to tuck their hair behind their ear repeatedly. All of that goes under controlled body. Eye contact is crazy important and is something we'll be working on and rehearsing in class, but making sure that you're not just making eye contact with me, but making sure you're making eye contact with the whole class throughout the course of your speech. Comfortable book use doesn't necessarily just mean the book. It also means the note cards that you're using or the papers that you're reading off of. Please make sure that you are using a presentation tool and not your Chromebook to speak from. It's really distracting. You tend to not make as much eye contact when it's a Chromebook. You tend to lean in toward the Chromebook more. So many things cascade down from that problem. Polished presence. Again, just that you've obviously rehearsed and your stuff is together up there. All of the pieces are fitting. Seamless flow means that you're not choppy, you're not lost in the middle of it. Again, that is usually a rehearsal error. Establishing empathy means that you are presenting in such a way that your audience wants to pay attention to you. I think we've all seen presenters before that do not do a good job of establishing audience empathy. And so we want to connect with you. Your audience wants you to do a good job, but you have to speak in a way that accepts that from them. On your oral interpretation grade, this presentation block will be all that we grade for that because you won't have written the piece. But for every other speech, we will continue on to the back. Now, each of these blocks also is, again, one of the 6+1 writing traits. So voice is really important. We'll talk about this in class, but voice deals with making that speech you. I should be able to assign a topic to your class and have everyone speak on it, and I should have 20-something completely different speeches in there because each of you is bringing an element of yourself into the speech as we are listening. So That's what voice is. So I want you to have a unique perspective. I want you to connect with your audience. I want you to be committed to your topic. Speak about something you're caring about. You will be choosing your topic every time. There's no need to choose a topic that you're meh about. Make sure that your topic is suited to your audience, understand what the room is like, who the people are that are in there, and make sure that it's a topic that you can reach out across the aisle with. Fits the purpose. Make sure that if you're giving a persuasive speech, your speech is persuasive. Organization. We'll talk about having an attention getter. You want your introduction to your speech to be engaging. You want to state your main points in your introduction. We should hear your main points 3 times in your speech. We should hear them in your introduction. We should hear them in the body of your speech. We should hear them again in your conclusion. We do not have the benefit of having a script in front of us to look back if we forget what you said. You have to emblazon it in our brain by saying them 3 times. So you have to say those main points in your introduction. In the body of your speech, you should have thoughtful transitions, and everything should be sequenced logically. You should have controlled pacing throughout, so you aren't just throwing out 2 sentences on one topic and 20 on another. You should signal that your conclusion is coming. We should know that you're getting ready to end. There shouldn't be a lag between the conclusion of your speech and the applause, because it should sound like you've wrapped it up at the end. That's kind of what the satisfying conclusion piece is that we don't feel like you've just left us kind of teetering off a cliff. Summarizing your main points, again, we should hear them again in the conclusion. Conventions. This is the grammar-y kind of specific writing skills portion of the program. We want your grammar and usage to be solid. We want your conventions to be consistent throughout. We want you to be creative with how you're using grammar. We should hear different sentence types over the course of this. This is also where visual aids fit in. Every speech, except your oral interpretation of literature, will be required to have a visual aid that you will create for it. It needs to aid us visually, which means we need to see it. It can't be a small little printed out picture that you've taped on a piece of poster board and have against the front wall. That doesn't aid us visually because we can't see it. Okay, moving over to the right side. Ideas. Have some. They need to be clear and focused. You need to give us rich detail, lots of facts, supporting details, stories, anecdotes. You should have a clear purpose to what you're saying to us. We should be able to know within the first few sentences what the topic of your speech is. If you're wrapping up your speech and we still don't know what your topic is, that's a problem. This is where your thesis needs to be considered. Substance. It needs to be important. It needs to feel kind of heavy and be kind of weighty. You should have good ideas that back you up. Accuracy. Make sure that what you're saying is true and not outdated. Sometimes web research can go bad very quickly if you have not checked for updated sources. Fresh thinking means that I want to see what you've done with it. Your speech should not just be you quoting a whole bunch of other people. They should be your ideas that you use other people to back you up with. Sentence fluency. This deals with how you artfully put together your speech. It should sound like it has a natural cadence. That's a natural rhythm to your speaking. Your phrasing should be smooth. You shouldn't be tripping over your own words. You should have a varied type of sentences, which should be well built and constructed with varied starters, so it sounds like we have some variety going on in there. Word choice is incredibly important. This is also the difference maker between the A speech and the A+ speech. A lot of people get a little frustrated from time to time because getting the 100 can be very difficult. Most of the time, there are 2 categories in here I'll talk about last that are the biggest problems for that. Let's skip the first one. Active verbs, that's important. We don't want to have a passive speech. You want to have visual writing where you're painting a very clear picture for us, and your words should be specific and mean what you say. Don't use a word you can't define. That happens a lot in here. The 2 that I skipped over here are the 2 that frequently are the difference maker between an A speech and an A+. Let's go up halfway to special moments. That sounds really cheesy and like a bad greeting card is getting ready to happen. But this is the difference between a really great speech and one that stops us in our tracks. One that makes us feel something. One that gives us chills, or makes us happy, or makes us upset, makes us want to make a change, makes us want to cheer for somebody, makes us want to meet somebody. Those are worthy of a different level. That points us toward the 100. The other area is wordsmithery. As we talk about in class, silversmiths make stuff out of silver, coppersmiths make stuff out of copper, And wordsmiths make stuff out of words. This is the difference between writing a speech and crafting a speech. This is where the people who are truly artists with words get a little extra booster point, because that is a skill that takes a lot of work and a lot of writing and a lot of trial and error and a lot of risk taking. And this is where we reserve some space to credit that risk taking. It'll be pretty clear pretty quickly when you hit a speech that you hear that is going to get a 5 on the wordsmithery, because it will be art. You will almost want them to deliver it again. That's the difference. Now, back up here to page 1. Over to the right, after all of those little circles are made on the rubric, here is what happens. Okay, we start with the presentation score, which is whatever they get here times 3, and that goes in up here. And that'll be 225 points. And then the back is 175, so that will go here, and we total that score out of 400. Then we subtract 1 point for each vocalized pause. A vocalized pause is an those filler sounds that we use when we can't think of what word's coming next. I've probably used some in this video. It happens. But we want to avoid them as much as humanly possible. So we keep track of them just to make you aware of them. And then each of those basically will end up being a 0.25 off of the score, but we'll subtract whole point value out of the 400. Then we divide that by 4 to give us a percentage. At that point in time when we have the percentage, if you haven't had any violations, that's your speech grade. If you have had violations from this box here, that is when we take those deductions into consideration. The first and most intense are the time deductions. Like we said at the beginning of the semester, if you are under by 15 seconds from your required time, it is an automatic 40% off your score. That is huge, but so is being under the minimum time of your speech by 15 or more seconds. So that means you didn't do enough work, you didn't rehearse it, otherwise you would know that that's a problem and you could fix it. And both of those issues, not doing enough work and not rehearsing, are worthy of failing a speech in a speech class. So 40% off for that. If you are over the time by 30 seconds, it becomes 10% off for each 30 seconds you're over. The dress violation. Each speech will have a required dress code. If you choose not to meet it, you can still speak, but you'll be dropping 20% off of that public speaking grade. Citation violation. This is about verbal citations, saying your sources out loud. We will go over that in class extensively, but you have to verbally tell me where you got every piece of information that you're using in a speech. If you don't do that, or you're hit and miss with it, it's going to be 20% off your grade. Bibliography is your works cited page. That's the paper piece of the puzzle. And if you don't hand me one before you speak, that's going to be a 20% off your grade. So all of those violations then get added up, removed here, and the end result is your speech grade. So that is how the grading process goes every time. Do not expect a different rubric for each speech. It's a different kind of look at how those skills apply, but it's the same set of skills and we're judging them the same way every time. So keep looking at that. In addition to getting the rubric back from me every time you speak, you'll also be getting feedback from each one of your peers. You'll get anonymous feedback from them that will be copied and pasted to an an online Google spreadsheet that I share with you. And then all you have to do is kind of keep looking at that, and you'll see how your peer feedback goes as the semester progresses. So again, give me a contact at sdavis@perryschools.org if you have questions, but this is your speech rubric.